Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So today we're doing a much requested video, which is a comparison between Apple's TechWoven case and the best replica or fake or copy, however you want to put it, that I could find on the market. Now, the reason I've delayed this video so long, so obviously these products come out before the phones do. The cases were available, I could have bought them months ago. But the reason I delayed this to this point was because this is the first point where the replica cases actually come with a camera control button. So in theory, this is as close as you're ever going to get to the real deal. As you can see, the packaging is slightly different. You could probably already tell which one's the genuine one and which one's fake. Now, I haven't unboxed any of the Apple ones. I did have a quick look at the replicas. Now, one thing about the replicas, when you order them, these ones I did purchase from AliExpress. And when I ordered them, all that I actually ordered was the cases themselves. But as you can see, the reason I've left them in this packaging is they do actually include something extra with every single one. So they have actually included the rear glass protectors for the camera bump for every single case that they've actually sent out. Now, I don't know whether they include that if you were to order just one. Obviously, because I've ordered every color, it may be that they decide to throw them in as a gift. They didn't say anything about that on the advert, and they didn't mention anything in a message or anything like that. I have paid full retail price for all of these. So from Apple, these are $59.99 here in the UK, and these, I believe, they go for roughly around about £12 each. I believe this whole set cost me about £100, but at the time I ordered, there were some discounts on AliExpress as well. So all of this did come in with a significant discount. So all of this is less than £100. I think, if I remember correctly, they're probably around about £90. I'll put the correct pricing on screen. These ones were close to £300 for the 5 cases. Okay, so in order to cut down the time of this video and concentrate solely on the cases, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do one unboxing just to show you the difference in terms of the actual packaging, to help you figure out if you were to buy one of these online, whether you've got a genuine one or a fake. And then the rest of it I'm just going to do off screen, and then we'll start going through the actual cases. So because the orange is the most striking, I think we'll do that for both. So as you can tell, this is the genuine one and this is the replica. So in terms of the boxes, now the AliExpress listings do actually charge you extra for a box. So if you don't pay the extra, then they would probably just send it in one of these and just bubble wrap it or something. So if you want the box, you do have to actually pay extra. Obviously, it's still significantly cheaper, but that is something to note, that if you are gifting this, or if you're buying one online and you're not sure, the AliExpress ones do charge you extra. Now, taking a look at the actual packaging, so straight away I can tell you that the boxes themselves are not identical in terms of sizing. The Apple one just feels slightly bigger in all dimensions. I mean, I think it's only millimeters, but it is definitely noticeable that it is slightly chunkier. In terms of the actual text on here, you can see that the genuine one is a lot more pronounced. It's much easier to read this. The image of the case is bigger on the genuine one compared to the replica. So once again, it's only a small amount, but it is definitely bigger on this one. The color is different. All of this, MagSafe, everything is a lot clearer on the genuine one. Turning around the back, it looks very similar. Obviously, all of the fakes, they never have the tear tab. On the genuine ones, you always have to tear this before you can actually get into the packaging. Because they're supplying these without a case, they only put it in a box if obviously you've paid for it. So that, I'm guessing, is the reason. So in terms of the naming and everything on the back here, so their writing is a bit more pronounced compared to Apple's, but they have got the colors. So TechWoven case Sienna on both. The model number is wrong. So they've got A3561, and on here it's got A3562, and they've just got a load of other information on there that you don't have on the genuine one. I mean, it's close. If you were to see these without them being side by side, you may struggle to know the difference. The fake also has some extra stickers on the side as well. So opening it up, as you can see, the fake just opens. This is how it came. I haven't torn anything off or anything. This is just how it actually came. So in order to get into the genuine one, they do have this tear tab. And then once you've torn that, then it will open. So straight away, I can tell you, despite the fact that on the box, the genuine one was darker and the fake was lighter, in reality the genuine one is actually slightly lighter and the fake is actually darker. The fake also has what looks like a little bit of staining straight away as well. In terms of the embossed logo, that is pretty much identical. Let's get these out. So in terms of paperwork, you get 2 bits with the replica, and with Apple's you get that same card, and then yes, still only 2 bits, but this one is branded with the Apple logo, and I'm guessing this is going to be in a few more languages compared to the fake. Okay, so putting these side by side, so as you can see, the genuine one's button is very much molded into the actual case, whereas the replicas, you can tell that it's basically been added in afterwards. The buttons, this is something that I used to see on the leather cases in years gone by as well, where the buttons on the fakes are thinner. So the genuine one's much more pronounced in terms of the button. It is a floating button, but compared to Apple's is very loose, and that's going to give you very good tactile feedback. Whereas on the AliExpress one, it is quite firm. On the opposite side, same thing, so we'll keep it consistent, so we'll keep the AliExpress one on the left. So the Apple buttons are very chunky and they're very loose, so as soon as you put your phone in, these are going to give you really good tactile click, whereas the fakes, and this is something that I really disliked on their cases when I used to do the leather case reviews, which was the buttons would be so firm that they would click even with you just slightly brushing the button at times. So yeah, that was a complaint in the past. So on the genuine one, you can see Apple's added in some plastic that reinforces those holes, whereas on the replica they've literally just cut the holes. So comparing them side by side there, you can see the genuine one just looks a lot more polished in terms of fit and finished. So similar thing on the inside. So if you look at how Apple have actually done the buttons, you can see they've added quite a lot of reinforcement to that area, whereas comparing that to the fake, you can see they've literally just added what looks like maybe the old kind of leather or silicone kind of covers that you used to get. They've got some branding on the inside of that section just there as well. Does Apple have that? So Apple has some writing in there, but it's a lot more difficult to actually see that. In terms of your camera bumps, they're both pretty much identical, and on the outside, in terms of the material feel, it's very difficult to tell any difference between them. I would say, if anything, the replica is a little bit rougher, but I think that's very, very similar on both. Taking a look at the actual camera bumps, so yeah, the color difference is quite obvious. So on Apple's, it's very consistent across the whole thing, whereas on the replica, it almost looks like certain parts are dyed slightly differently, and this area here in particular, if you take a look, the color consistency between those two is very different. Similar thing along the top, so Apple's is very consistent in their gapping and how it's tucked in, whereas the replica almost looks a little messy in terms of how it's actually been put together and how it reacts to the actual mold. Okay, so first thing we'll do is we'll go with the genuine one. So we'll throw this on. And you can see, as with all Apple genuine cases, it gives you the little splash screen. So in terms of your buttons, very, very tactile. So the buttons feel great. In terms of your camera control, works perfectly, and your swipe gesture is very similar as well. One thing I dislike about a lot of cases is you can accidentally trigger the camera control quite easily. Generally, it is the ones that are flush that tend to do that more. In terms of grip, it is actually very, very grippy. So all of this, the sides and the back, it all has texture. So even though the sides are smoother than the back, it still has texture. So this is actually quite a grippy case. Okay, so putting that on is very easy, and taking it off was very easy as well. Now we'll go for the first replica case. So put it in. So first thing you notice is, yeah, they have tried to replicate the NFC tag, but there's no color splash screen, so it didn't actually recognize what color the case was. The other thing I've noticed straight away is the feel is actually very different. So before I said it was hard to distinguish, but this definitely feels slippery compared to that one. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know whether it's the material on the sides, where this feels like the old fine woven. That's what this feels like. It almost feels like the old fine woven cases. The sides they just feel more slippery. In terms of your buttons, so despite it being a metal button, that's not actually very tactile. Yeah, so as I was expecting, because the buttons are so slim, it's not giving you that same feedback that the genuine case was doing. Let's just test out camera control. So this, to be fair, that does work perfectly fine. And yeah, so camera control itself is fine. It does look a little bit different compared to Apple's method of doing it. But yeah, the whole case is just slightly more slippery compared to Apple's version. The other thing I noticed straight away, and this is another thing that we used to get on the old leather cases, the replica leather cases, is you're getting a much more significant lip at the front. So the whole case is much deeper compared to Apple's version. So Apple's literally just fit perfect, whereas this is overlapping slightly. So if you do want more lay on the table design, then you're probably better off getting one of the replicas. In terms of your ports at the bottom, as you can see, so these, it just looks a little messy. And even if this is reinforced, over time, if you do use a lanyard with this, then that will damage the bottom of the case. Whereas Apple's implementation is to add this plastic reinforcement, so you won't get anything damaging this, because that is pretty solid. Whereas this, that's just the actual material of the case. And yeah, side by side, you can probably see how much shallower Apple's version is compared to the replica. The other thing you could probably notice there as well is you're able to see much more of the TechWoven material compared to Apple's version. So this is adding quite a lot of bulk in comparison to Apple's. Now, one thing I have been doing on all the case reviews is testing the MagSafe. Yeah, so as expected, because this case is much thicker, the MagSafe is not very strong when it comes to falling off the phone. And testing the MagSafe on the genuine one, well, actually, yeah, so compared to that one as well, that's not the strongest that I've tested either. So it's decent, but it's definitely not the strongest MagSafe that I've actually used out of all the cases I've reviewed on my channel this year. So on both of these, MagSafe is okay. It would still be suitable for car mounts, but as you can see, it does fall off. Whereas I've had cases where I've literally had to shake them so much and they still don't fall off. And yeah, so this is what I was saying. So the genuine version is literally only just past. So I've got a screen protector installed, and this isn't adding much bulk. So you're getting maybe less than a mil worth of clearance compared to the replica, which is adding quite a bit of bulk on the side. Okay, so with both of these, one thing I have noticed is the genuine one actually comes off very easily. I would say it might even be a little bit too easy, especially around the camera bump. You can literally just press these top bits and it will come off just because of how much flex it actually has. The replica is actually very hard to get off in comparison unless you do the top. So the rest of the case won't come off quite easily. It's only the top, very top section that will actually flex, and as you can see, there's much less flex in this compared to Apple's version. So in terms of rigidity, this is actually a lot better, but that will make it more awkward if you do swap out cases quite a bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get all of them unboxed and we'll take a look at the colors comparison between them. Okay, so we've already taken a look at the orange cases. Let's take a look at the purple. So you can see once again, the genuine one is actually lighter than the replica. The replica's Apple logo is just a mess on here. So I don't know if that's going to come across that well, but you can see behind it, there's almost like a semicircle pressed on the inside where it just looks messy. You're also getting much more lint, I've noticed, on all of these on the replicas compared to the genuine ones. The camera surround, I've also just noticed as well, is also slightly different. So on these ones, it's not even, so it's not straight. It seems like it's actually bowing ever so slightly on the replica. This one has also thrown up another little issue, which is on the genuine one, your holes are all even, whereas on this one, it seems like whatever machine they've used to press the holes, it's left an indentation on the actual case itself, material wise. So the replica feels sticky. It's almost like this is more of a silicone material compared to the genuine one. If anything, yeah, the genuine one probably feels a little bit more slippery to begin with, but this case, once you actually put it on, it actually feels a lot more slippery in the hand. The quality of the camera control button is obviously going to be better on the genuine one, but as I've shown earlier in the video, the replica camera control button does work perfectly fine. Now, one thing I have noticed is the buttons on this one are slightly closer to the genuine one. They're slightly thicker, but yeah, these ones definitely feel like they're floating ever so slightly more. The material on the inside on this one definitely feels more of a silicone compared to the orange one. On the genuine version, the inside is the same material, whereas on the replica, this whole side border feels a completely different material. So that is the genuine purple case on the phone. You can see all of the buttons, nice, good tactile feedback. Camera control is perfectly fine. Along the bottom, in terms of cutouts, you can see everything is spot on. And we'll just give MagSafe another quick test as well. So yeah, after a certain point, this does fall off, whereas there have been other cases that I've tested which won't fall off. And I'm not sure if that's because this, whilst being grippy in texture, it does add layers. And that means that you're not getting the same adhesion from a flat surface. So this obviously isn't flat, and that's probably what's diminishing the strength of the magnets ever so slightly. It's good enough. I would say it'll be fine for most accessories, but it's definitely not the strongest that I've tested. But yeah, the fit and finish of this case does feel quite premium. The sides are very grippy. That's one thing I will say about this case. This is definitely much more grippy compared to the old fine woven cases, which after a while they just didn't look very good. And now trying the replica case, so let's see what animation this one gives. So yeah, it's just a clear animation that the replica gives. It doesn't give the splash screen of the actual color of the case. So they have a NFC chip in here, which they've had for quite a few years now, but they just can't mimic the color because they're probably just using the same NFC chip for all of these. And I'm pretty sure that was also the wallet animation as opposed to the case one. In terms of feel, so these sides almost feel like silicone. The feel is definitely a lot different compared to the genuine one. In terms of buttons, so yeah, these buttons are a little bit better. So that's another thing. So obviously there's no real consistency between the cases, because these buttons I could tell straight away are a little bit more floating compared to the orange case. And if you have more of a sort of floating button, you're going to get a better sort of tactile feel from it as well. In terms of your ports, this just looks a little bit messy, and this is what I meant. So you can see that indentation that they've created on the case as a result of whatever machine they've used to actually press the holes. These I do not think will be reliable. If you use a lanyard over time, because it's going to be so sharp, it's going to end up tearing through that. Maybe not straight away, but it will eventually. You are getting much more of a lay on the table design, and it feels like there's more gap in between the case and the phone. So it just feels chunkier compared to Apple's version. That's the biggest difference between these. Feel wise, the sides are much grippier, but that is resulting in a lot more lint, because I'm pretty sure they've got some sort of a silicone material over the top of the actual TechWoven material. In comparison to early replicas of the leather cases, these aren't bad, but I don't know how they're still getting the Apple logo so wrong. I mean, you should be able to see that on screen, where you've got this sort of round indentation where it almost looks like somebody's pressed it twice, or on the old cases where they used to have like a sticker behind the actual logo part. That's what this looks like. Next up, we'll look at the blues. So once again, the replica is darker than the genuine version. That's one thing that, despite on the cases, so on the packaging, you can see the genuine ones, in fact, maybe on this one is slightly different. So on this one, you can see more of the actual TechWoven material, whereas this is pretty plain, and then they've just kind of printed a pattern over the top of it. But in terms of the actual cases, so the genuine one is lighter than the replica. On this one, the Apple logo isn't as bad, but it's definitely not as neat and precise as the genuine version. Buttons wise, this one is similar to the orange case. So the buttons aren't as loose, and as a result, I'm pretty sure they're not going to be as nice to press either. Yeah, so let's get these thrown on the phone and we'll take a look. Now on the last one, for some reason, it didn't do the full splash screen. So that is what's supposed to happen when you put it on any case. It's supposed to give you the color splash screen with the MagSafe logo, and then it kind of fills the screen. So the other thing it will do is it will give you this option here where it will tint your icons based on the color of the case, and we'll have to wait and see whether it gives us that option on the Replica. Yeah, so the blue case, very similar story. So it is sort of grippy, not as grippy as the Replicas, just because they seem to be using a silicone material over the top. I believe these do have some sort of silicone or some sort of material over the top of the TechWoven material, but the Replica just feels a lot more pronounced. So it looks like whatever they've done is they've literally just coated it a lot more compared to what Apple are doing with theirs. Once again, cutouts are all perfect on these, buttons are tactile, the camera bump protection, everything is right there. And just taking a side-on look, so you are getting well clear of the actual cameras in comparison to a couple of cases which are really huge and some that are really shallow and only just passing the actual cameras. But yeah, once again, on the front you're not getting much of a lay on the table design. So compared to the replicas are much chunkier. This isn't adding much to the actual footprint of the phone, so the phone itself doesn't feel that much bigger. And now time for the Replica, so we'll see what this does. Yeah, so as you can see, that's the wallet animation that it's doing, and it's been like that since the early leather cases when they first introduced the actual animation, where they just use an NFC chip that just gives you a animation as opposed to one that either matches the case or matches what it actually is, which is a phone case rather than a wallet. So the camera protector on this is a lot higher than Apple's genuine version, and as I previously mentioned, the lip on the front is also a lot more pronounced as well. Now, one thing I've noticed on this particular case, which as mentioned before, the buttons are horrible. So I'm pressing that and there's virtually no feel to that at all. So this is the problem with these floating buttons. Now sometimes you can fix that just by taking the case off and pressing it in or kind of messing around with the inside material. These buttons aren't as bad, but the power button on this one is completely mushy. There's literally no feel there at all. Ironically, camera control is the one button because of the way it's designed, where you're always going to get a pretty good tactile feel on it as long as there's a button there. The power button on this one is just horrible. Taking a look at the actual ports, yeah, it's just not as good of a finish. I mean, you can see there's already a little bit of damage on the bottom just there. The way that the back material sticks out so far compared to the genuine version, I think I'd be quite confident in spotting this as a fake if this was supplied to me. Not maybe from the packaging alone, but yeah, compared to the originals, these are definitely not on par in terms of quality. They're close, but yeah, you're getting inconsistencies such as the power button not working perfectly on this particular one and the orange one, despite it being quite good on the purple version. And let's just do another quick test of the MagSafe. So the MagSafe strength, I would say, is probably about the same, and that could just be down to the actual material itself. And obviously with this being a much chunkier case, I don't think it's benefiting as well from the sort of double MagSafe that you get from the phone and the magnets in the case as you do with some cases. With all of these, you're going to get a much chunkier case compared to the genuine one. And I think the reason it does what it's doing in terms of the power button is, as you can see there, the center part of this button isn't actually floating, it's only the sides. Now these ones, because they're much smaller buttons, it enables them to interact a little easier. Whereas with this one, I mean, what I did find was on a leather case, replica leather case years ago, what I did was I literally just cut around that material slightly, and I did actually free up the button enough to where it would work a little bit better. So once you start to get some actual floating movement on that, then sometimes they will react a little bit better. But I could tell straight away as soon as I pressed this for the very first time that this is one of the ones where it's going to jam on and it's going to cause you problems with the usage. So next up is the green cases, and once again the genuine version is a little bit lighter compared to the replica. The Apple logo on this one isn't as bad, but once again it's still not perfect in comparison to the genuine version. In terms of your buttons, yeah, once again very slimmed down, so there's so much inconsistency in terms of even the sizing. So I don't know how obvious it's going to be on screen, but comparing, yeah, that one. So comparing the purple to the green, I can see it's definitely much chunkier. And maybe that's the reason why the purple was actually the only one that actually worked well. Whereas these really narrow ones, they just don't work well. And the Apple ones, they're Apple case buttons, so they always work perfectly. But you should be able to tell the different inconsistency between the replicas there. So this one I'm expecting to be quite bad in terms of tactile feedback, because when I press that, you can see it's actually forcing the case. So it's pulling the whole case in with it, and we'll keep it consistent. So on this, in fact, what I'll do is I'll just drop that one down for a sec. Yeah, these ones are the same. So these ones, they will give more tactile feedback just because they're smaller buttons, but they won't do it in such a way where the genuine one does, where each button feels really good. Now the inside on this one is much brighter, and unlike the genuine version which color matches, this one, that's not really a green, that's something else altogether. It almost looks brown to me. So in terms of the inside, the genuine one, in terms of your button covers in comparison to the replica. So the replica's camera control button is similar, you can see just there, but the actual buttons themselves, the material that they're using on those is definitely not the same as what Apple have got on theirs. So here you can see what the genuine one looks like. So it is encased in this ring, whereas on the replicas it's just cut out and they've just put some material over the top, and that material is ironically what causes most of the problem. Okay, so let's get the green thrown on and take a look. So once again, nice green splash screen, and yeah, fit and finish. I mean, at this point, I'm getting exactly what you expect from Apple. There's consistency between all of their cases. The quality is consistently good. I've not noticed any blemishes really on any of their cases, whereas compared to the replicas do have quite a lot of blemishes. This is probably the only one that I've noticed where just in this top corner, there's a slight divot just there. That's probably the biggest sort of quality issue that I've noticed with the genuine versions. And comparing that to the replica, so once again, just a wallet splash screen, and seeing as we didn't check it before, so let's just go into customizing and we'll go to tinted, and does that do anything? No, because when I'm clicking that, so I have a green case on and it's adding a blue tint. So yeah, they've got some sort of a chip in there, but it's clearly not matching what the actual color of the case is. And that button it's not as bad as the blue one, but it's definitely not great in terms of tactile feedback. These ones, once again, as I mentioned, because they're smaller and because they're not interconnected, they're not as bad. But this power button, it's generally the power button on all of these replica ones that tend to perform a little bit worse. If you do hit the corners, they're a little bit better, but if you do hit it flush on the side, then there's not much feedback at all. Once again, I would not trust these lanyard holes. Over time, I would expect if you have a string around there, it's going to cut through and obviously risk dropping your £1,000 plus phone. Strangely, this case doesn't have as much of that silicone material, so even between the cases, this one, it feels a lot different to the green one. That's what you're paying for with the genuine ones. You're paying for consistency, whereas with these, it's hit and miss what you'll end up getting. And finally, the black cases. So with these ones, even the actual box itself, it doesn't actually look black. That looks more blue, a sort of navy or really dark blue compared to pure black as you're getting with the genuine version. So once again, more lint on the replica. The Apple logo, it just looks completely wrong in terms of how it's embossed. So the genuine one has a roundness to it, and the replica just feels like it's pressed straight down and then kind of burnt in almost. Once again, the really narrow buttons, which is giving no feel whatsoever, and even without a phone in there, I can tell that the Apple ones are going to work quite well. The one thing obviously they do have consistency in is the camera control button, and that's worked quite well on all of these. In terms of your cutouts, you can see the genuine one just looks a lot more polished compared to the replica. On this one, once again, we're getting a little bit of indenting, and the holes don't even look as big on this one. So those holes, compared to some of the other cases, it looks like they've not pressed them quite so big. On the side, so a little bit of marking on the genuine one on this one. So fitting the genuine black case, You get the splash screen. And the other thing I've noticed straight away on the genuine ones as well is that they do press in pretty much perfect every time. Whereas the replicas, you almost have to double check to make sure all of your corners are actually pressed in on the replica cases. So yeah, once again, this one, grip wise, they're all consistent with the Apple cases. So that's one thing that I have noticed, where they all feel the same on the back as well as on the sides. There's a very consistent feel to all of them. And once again, all your cutouts are pretty much perfect. Your buttons are really nice and tactile. Camera control works perfectly. And MagSafe strength is the one area where I'm a little bit disappointed in terms of that does come off, whereas I've had other cases where I've shaken them just as much, bearing in mind that this isn't adding much bulk, so the phone itself feels quite small and it's not adding much weight either. So if you're not adding bulk and you're not adding weight, then really they should be stronger. So that's one complaint I would have about the genuine ones, where even the genuine ones MagSafe is not as strong as it could be. I'm not saying it's weak, but it's definitely not as strong as some of the other cases that I've tested. And throwing on the Replica black case. So once again, you get the wallet animation. It feels much bigger, so it feels deeper. It feels like it's kind of dropped into the case rather than fitting the case. The benefit of that is obviously it does give you more of a lip. So if you are looking for that in your case, then like I say, the Replica would actually be better. In terms of feedback, so it's not as bad as the blue one. So on this one, the feedback from the button is not terrible, but it's not great either. These three buttons on this one actually feel quite mushy as well. And the one thing I did want to check on this one was the hole alignment, because to me these look tiny, and whilst they might be aligned, it's not leaving much for that sound to actually travel out of and into for the speakers and microphones respectively. The sides on this one aren't quite as grippy as some of the other cases, the Replica cases, but yeah, once again, it's just a combination of all the little things, which means it's close. They look the part in terms of how close they're getting, but there's so many small things, the Apple logo, how chunky it is, how much heavier it is. They're just a combination of little things. So obviously the biggest thing is the buttons. Having bad buttons on a case is a deal breaker for me. The Apple logo, it just, on all of them, it looks a little bit messy. Adding more bulk, so you're getting much more of a chunkier case. Even though it may only be a few millimeters, once you're holding it, you can actually tell the difference in the hand, especially when you're comparing them back to back. The MagSafe strength on this one, I would say on the replicas, bearing in mind that you're adding more bulk and probably more weight as well, not much, but just maybe a tiny little bit. The magnets on this actually perform slightly better than the genuine ones, because the genuine ones fall off as well, but this feels heavier, it feels chunkier. Yeah, so it will still fall off, but I would say they're okay. They're not brilliant and they're not terrible either. I think the biggest thing for me is the buttons, and for anybody else out there that really gets annoyed having bad buttons on the case, you're definitely not going to like these cases. Okay, so first impressions of both the genuine ones and the replicas. So first up, the genuine ones. So I think they're decent cases. I still prefer the leather cases over all of these kind of fine woven and tech woven ones that Apple have come out with. I get why they do it, but for me, I wish that they would just put out, even if it's just some vegan leather cases, I would much rather have a leather case for this price compared to all of these kind of weird materials. The only benefit of these is because they don't have a Alcantara interior lining, you can wash these in theory fully. Because I work outdoors, they pick up a lot of dirt, and basically you can wash this down completely. The buttons, everything, the fit finish, it's what you would expect from Apple, so it's all very good. I don't think it's my favorite case in terms of all the ones that I've sort of received and reviewed for the 17 Pro Max this year. I think the color contrast that you get with their cases, with their phones, is always something that's quite good. But yeah, it's not brilliant, but it's not terrible either. In terms of the replicas, they've done a pretty good job in terms of how close they've got it, especially given that they've actually managed to replicate the camera control buttons. The early ones that just had the cutout, they were a no-go in terms of trying to replicate a genuine one. But the biggest things for me is the inconsistency between cases. So if we just take a look at these three replica cases, So it should be quite obvious that this button is chunkier than these ones, and as a result you're actually getting more of a feel. On this one, this is the worst of the lot, so that has virtually no movement on the blue one, and that it's little things like that. The other thing is the inconsistency between the materials. So the purple is really grippy. This feels like straight up silicone, whereas comparing it to the green one feels like the old fine woven material, the sort of sides that you had on that, where it's smoother, there's less of the texture. But this one is much smoother, and this one you're getting more of that grain on the actual material itself, so you're getting inconsistency between the cases themselves just based on the colors. The other thing is, even though the purple's got the best buttons, it's got the worst Apple logo, I think. So you can see that little bit of a mess just there in comparison to the green version, for example. Now, bearing in mind these are probably a fifth of the price, for anybody out there that's looking to buy one, would I recommend it? Probably not. I would say for around about £15–20, there's other cases out there that you can purchase. If you're just looking for a case, and obviously you're looking at the price difference, then yeah, it gets pretty close, but I would not say this is on par with the genuine ones just yet, and I don't think it ever will be. So they're making these at a certain cost, and they're making decisions that will get them close, but I don't think they'll ever get as close as they did with the old leather cases, which were actually very good and maybe a suitable alternative. But with these, I just don't think, unless you're really on a budget, you should really be going for the replicas on these ones. Okay, so to finish this video, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a montage of all the cases on the phone. So first we'll go for the genuine ones, and then we'll go for the replicas. Okay, so first up is the genuine Sienna. You can see how that looks just there. Next up is the genuine purple. So against the silver, most of these colors are going to look quite good in terms of the contrast. Next up is the genuine blue. Next we have the genuine green, and having the color-coded buttons is always really nice with the Apple cases. And then the genuine black case. Now, this I think is the most professional in terms of having something that is suitable for the office. And now we have the replica Sienna. So straight away you can notice the narrower buttons. Next up we have the replica purple. Yeah, once again, and this probably got the worst Apple logo out of all of them. Next up is the replica blue. So the material almost looks like jeans material on this. It's a lot more defined in terms of the actual pattern. Next up is the replica green. This is actually darker, more vibrant than the genuine version, but I think over time I don't think this will stand up to wear and tear quite so well. And finally the replica black. So once again, the feel, the fit and finish, everything on this just doesn't feel the same quality as the genuine versions do. So that is all of the genuine ones. And there is all the replicas. So as you can see, the purple definitely stands out because it looks like the buttons press slightly differently, and it also has chunkier buttons. But ironically, that's actually the one that had decent buttons, and the rest of them, they all have a very inconsistent feel in terms of the actual power button in particular. The other buttons, they can be okay, but yeah, the power button in particular is pretty bad on most of these. And you can see the differences in terms of the camera control buttons. As previously mentioned, these kind of videos do take a long time to edit, so I'd really appreciate if you can give this video a thumbs up and also share it. And if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos.